Look, when you have $1 million in your IRA, it looks like you have $1 million, but you have a silent partner in that IRA, and that's the IRS. There really are two piles of money. One is yours, call it 70%. The other is the IRS's. So 700,000 of that $1 million IRA is yours. 300,000 belongs to the IRS. If that IRA grows to $2 million, then guess what? The IRS's portion grew right along with it. So you now have 1.4 million. The IRS has 600,000. So there's no catching up.
Retirement for life. Your passport to a comfortable and confident retirement. The podcast that's equal parts education and entertainment, where we break down the retirement maze with a dash of fun and a heap of wisdom from your host, Christian Sear CPA, the passionate retirement specialist and president of Sear Financial Wealth Advisors, the independent registered investment advisor specializing in the AIM Retirement System.
I am at one of the industry's best, maybe the industry's best retirement planning conference. The very first workshop I go to is helping financial advisors be better at delivering advanced tax planning. And there are 4 panelists. I didn't really pay attention to the panelists. I was sitting in the front row because I'm very proud of what we do. We were CPAs first. And of course, we kind of morphed into this, what is now a national retirement planning firm. But I am thinking that this workshop is going to be kind of ho-hum. I've done this, I've been there, everything. And guess what? One of the expert panelists starts speaking up, and I start looking at him and I realize that this is David McKnight, author of The Power of Zero. He is saying things that resonate with me so well. I'm just thinking about what can I do to ask him to be on this podcast. So David McKnight, welcome. Did you know that your book, Power of Zero, Forbes has said is one of the top 10 must-have financial books? Are you aware of that?
Yes. Yeah. It's a top 10 financial resource in the nation. A couple different years it said that. So was honored to read that. And hopefully it's been helping some people.
You are a pioneer of the tax-free retirement. You speak nationally. To be on this show is just really an honor to have me. So I'm really looking forward to digging right in. Can we just start talking about the U.S. debt, your favorite topic?
Sure. Yeah. Where do you want to begin?
Okay. First of all, the word fix, I don't think should be used when we're talking about the United States debt. I think we should use the word sustain. In other words, we're not going to fix the problem, but perhaps we can stop the bleeding. Is that true?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with having debt. Countries go into debt when they want to finance, infrastructures, any other, projects, what have you. It's not inherently bad to have debt. It's the debt to GDP ratio is really what people should be looking at. And you get to the point where, you get 175% debt to GDP, it starts to affect your gross national product. It starts to weigh heavily on the growth of the nation from a fiscal perspective. So it depends on whether you count the debt that we borrowed from Social Security or not. But, we're at 125%. We'll be at 150% by 2035, 175 by 2040, and then 200% by 2043. This is a big deal because Penn Wharton has said that if we don't fix the debt by 2043, so in other words, we don't right our fiscal ship of state by 2043, that's the point of no return. No combination of raising taxes or reducing spending by that point will prevent the financial collapse of our nation. So if you think of the debt as a snowball, it's going down the mountain. It'll get so big and so fast by that point that there's just no stopping it. It'll basically collapse the economy. So I think that the government's going to have to start doing something well in advance. By the way, they said that if in 2040, when it's 175%, that could also be the point of no return. They're taking a wait and see approach. It's somewhere between 2040 and 2043 is sort of the fiscal day of reckoning for our country. And so my thesis has been that they have to start phasing in tax increases in 2035 to give them enough ramp up period so that they're not doing this sort of a cliff, double taxes all in one year starting in 2039 or 2042, whenever that date happens to be. So it's It's not sustainable. Every year that goes by where Congress fails to act means the problem on the back end gets even bigger and more unsolvable. So it's an issue, and politicians frequently sweep it under the rug. It's not popular to talk about because to fix it, you're either going to have to raise taxes or reduce benefits or some combination of the two. And nobody wants to get voted out of office any sooner than they absolutely have to. So this is a big, sticky sort of a subject that nobody wants to touch. And every year that goes by where nobody touches it becomes even more problematic and increases the likelihood that taxes are going to go up.
Printing more money, I think nearly 100% of economists agree that you can't just print more money or continue to borrow more, essentially do nothing, or continue down the road we've been going. I think Elon Musk can speak to the fact that it's not going to be very easy, perhaps impossible, to cut spending enough to get this sustained. You and I actually, I don't know if you remember, I had thrown this out there to you. I love the idea of just doubling down and growing the gross domestic product, the growth of our economy. I don't know if you see that as a viable option. And if not, then that leaves the one thing that you mentioned already, taxes. Do you think it's going to happen that our GDP grows, or do you think, as you indicated earlier, 2035, 175% debt to GDP, that's when it's going to happen? I mean, what other course of action do you see happening besides higher taxes, if any?
I don't think we can grow our way out of the problem. Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget just came out with a report that says they have two variables. One's called G, that's the growth of the economy. One's called R, and that's the rate of interest on our debt. The problem with the debt is that it has to get refinanced every couple of years, and they send that debt out to auctions, and other companies bid on how much they're willing to, the rate at which they're willing to loan us money. And as our debt goes up, those rates are likewise going to go up. And so they're predicting that by I think it's like 2032 or so, the amount of interest that they're going to be charging us is going to be greater than what the projected growth rate is on the economy, and that those two lines sort of go in opposite directions from that point forward. And so again, it's not so much how much debt you have. I mean, if the growth of your economy is staying ahead of the interest that you're paying on the debt, then that's a sustainable scenario over long periods of time. But when the rate that you're paying is growing faster than the rate of your economy, you got a real problem on your hands. And that's why I think it's reasonable to be pessimistic about the outlook.
Yeah. We are a young country comparatively to the rest of the world, 250th birthday this year. When I look at other nations and their tax rates, I see 40, I see 45, I see 50. In some cases, I see 55. I feel like we're just growing up as a nation. We're the new kid on the block, just figuring out that social medicine, social retirement, social health, armed forces, public aid, safe national transportation, et cetera. So it costs money, right? And let's just face it, taxes are going to go up. So the next thing is, how much are they going to go up? Wharton put out an article in October of 2024 that really alarmed me when I first saw it. Taxes need to go up. All taxes across the board, federal taxes need to go up 33% immediately and permanently. But when you look at that, David, at first that number is a shock. Wow, 33% higher. But when you actually look back over the course of the last 40, 50, 60 years, we've kind of already been there. Do people that you talk to, do advisors that you work with and the people that they work with, does the average person realize what a low tax regime we have, and that 33% to 50% increase in taxes in the future is not something unfathomable?
Not generally. People hate paying taxes. When I do my presentations all across the country, routinely ask rooms full of people, "Hey, how bad are taxes today?" You know what they say? They say terrible, horrible, as bad as they've ever been. The truth is, Tax rates today are as low as we've seen in our lifetime. The problem is most people alive today that are worried about things like taxes, um, taxes have not been that high in our lifetime, or at least when we were sort of tax paying members of society, they've always been relatively low. And so we don't, unless we do some purposeful research into the archives and check out what tax rates were even as recently as the 1970s, we just don't realize how good we have it today, which is why when I talk about tax-free strategies like Roth conversions, I say, hey, look, you probably have another 10 years during which to take advantage of historically low tax rates. And every year that goes by where you fail to take advantage of historically low tax rates is potentially a year beyond, say, 2035, when you could be forced to pay some of the highest tax rates you've seen in your lifetime. So, no, people don't get it because they haven't studied history. I have studied history. I know how bad things have been in the past. I know that these tax rates today are really good deals of historic proportions.
Yeah. And who am I to disagree or have a different opinion than yours? I've often told people I think it's sooner than 10 years. Nobody knows the future. Neither of us do. And certainly nobody really knows. But the times are certainly changing. Looking at midterm elections coming up, certainly things aren't going to change overnight. But the point is, taxes are going to go up. You mentioned Roth conversions. That's what I say is the biggest financial opportunity for a generation of savers. I think it is, and I'm curious to hear your opinion on this. I think it's the biggest tool in the toolbox we as advanced tax planners have. I think that the Roth conversion is the focal point, and then all the other strategies are kind of surrounding or go around that focal point, which is the Roth conversion. You have a lot of great information on Roth conversions and a lot of great ideas about Roth conversions. What are the tax rates that you favor, tax brackets that you favor staying under, and what are the tax brackets that you despise when thinking about Roth conversion?
I say generally, if you're in a 10 or 12, stay in the 12. If you're in a 22 or 24, stay in the 22. Stay, never go higher than the 24. I think the 24% is a sweet spot in the current tax rates. You can go, all the way up to around $400,000. You can get
Hmm.
a lot of heavy lifting done within the 24% tax bracket. But what some people do, unfortunately, is they say, "Oh no, tax rates are going up; they're going to go up fast," and they reflexively convert all their IRAs or 401ks all in one year or over the course of several years, and they bump up into the 32, 35, or 37. I think we've got a runway here. I think we've got between 8 and 10 years of historically low tax rates. I think that Congress will continue to kick the can down the road. After all, no politician wants to be voted out of office any sooner than they have to. So I think that they're going to sort of try to sort of artificially suppress these tax rates. And when I say suppress artificially, they're just increasing the national debt to avoid having to raise tax rates. So I think they're going to continue to do that until probably 2035, which means we have this 10-year window during which to take advantage of historically low tax rates. So my least favorite tax bracket is the 32. If you're in the 22, it absolutely makes sense to go up to 24 because for an extra 2% on the margin, you can shift an extra $200,000 per year from your IRA to your Roth IRA. That's only a measly little
Hmm.
amount on the margin. But if you're saying, hey, I'm going to go from 24 to a 32 or 35 or 37, and you still have 10 years of historically low tax rates left, I think that's not prudent. I think you're going to remember the name of the game, Chris, is we want to do whatever combination of strategies is going to increase the likelihood that our money lasts through life expectancy. If you're paying a 32 when you could very easily stay in a 24 the whole time, you are unnecessarily giving money to the IRS that will cause you to run out of money sooner than you really needed to. And so I think that we need to be wise about the tax brackets we're using when executing these Roth conversions.
Yeah. Your comment, and you alluded to it, but your line of thinking and my line of thinking is very aligned. And one of the favorite things of mine that you say, I've heard you say, is that the number one goal of retirement is not to make as much money as possible, but to make your money last as long as possible. When I am talking to a first time prospect, people are watching us, listening to us, they want to know what it's like to work with us. you can always tell what's going to be potentially, and I hate to use the term bad client, but when a person asks me, the very first question out of the box is, what were your returns last year? I, number one, A, understand that this person doesn't get it. And B, I don't think this person is ever going to get it. It's going to be hard. This is a lot of education that is about to go on if this person is going to be a client. I couldn't agree with you more. Number one goal of what we do is first and foremost to make sure that you're not going to run out of money. Having said that, Roth conversions are a big part of what we're doing. I love this comment I get all the time on YouTube. I'll make a video about Roth conversions, and inevitably there'll be thousands of comments. And I'll just give you an example. Yeah, that's a great idea. Roth conversions. Thanks for the video. I just did a Roth conversion last year for $80,000. My thought is, why $80,000? Why wasn't it $80,450? Why wasn't it $150,000? Are people just randomly grabbing at numbers? People are going both ways. Just let's get this all done just because we want to get it done. That's probably a mistake. People are saying, let's drag this on for 20 years. I think that's a mistake. Tell me about your theory when it comes to not only optimizing the Roth conversion, but putting the number one goal first of making sure your money lasts as long as possible. How do we balance all of these factors?
Well, first of all, your Roth conversion strategy has to be coherent, and this is I always love to poke Dave Ramsey with in this regard. Dave Ramsey,
Kind way to say it.
yeah, he gives really willy-nilly advice when it comes to Roth conversions. For example, he says, don't do a Roth conversion when you're within 5 years of retirement or in retirement. Well, that can be Roth conversions in retirement, especially during the retirement income valley. That's one of the best times to do a Roth conversion. But really, you have to have some sort of coherence behind your strategy. And I say a good Roth conversion strategy has to answer three questions. Number one, how much of your IRA or 401k should you actually convert? And some people reflexively convert the entire thing, which doesn't necessarily make sense. And here's why. You remember, when you retire, you're always going to have some deductions left. By the time you do retire, all of your typical reductions have sort of vanished into thin air. Your house is paid off, kids have moved out, you're no longer contributing to your 401k. So those deductions are all gone. So the IRS gives you a deduction. It's called a standard deduction, which if you retire today as a married couple would be $32,200. What that means is that you can realize income from any number of sources, including your IRA or 401k, up to $32,200 without paying any tax at all. So if that's the case, why would you convert all of your IRA or 401k to Roth such that when you retire, you're gonna have no income left? What that means is that you will have needlessly paid taxes along the way on a portion of that IRA. So I tell people the first thing you got to do is how much money you're going to leave in that IRA such that it produces an RMD that's equal to or less than your standard deduction. For most married couples, that's like $350,000 to $400,000. And you also want it low enough that it doesn't cost Social Security taxation. So that's the first one. The second one is how much should you be converting per year? So now that you know what the ideal balance in your IRA is by the time you reach retirement, how much do you need to convert between now and then to be able to sort of whittle it down to the right amount? Might be, you're looking at the 24% tax bracket if you're currently in the 22 or 24. You're looking at the 12% tax bracket if you're currently in the 10 or 12. So you're figuring out how much you're going to actually convert per year. And then you also need to figure out the date by which you must get your Roth conversion completed. What is the date by which you should fully execute that Roth conversion? And that really is like asking yourself, how long do you think taxes are going to stay this historically low? I think I tell people shoot for 2035 or so. So I think that if you have those three questions in mind when you're executing or at least creating your Roth conversion strategy, that will increase the likelihood that at the end of the day, your money is going to last as long as you do.
I have a problem, David, with people who are using this term for Roth conversions, the break-even term.
Oh, yeah.
I don't like that. I think there's so much misinformation about this. I have trouble trying to explain to my retirees that a $100,000 IRA that has not yet been taxed is probably not nearly as good as $85,000 sitting in a Roth account for obvious reasons. People are thinking about what they see on their statement as what they have, when in fact the government probably owns 25% or more of your IRA and 401k when you die. How do we explain this to retirees uh, if they are having a hard time understanding that? And what are some of the things that you hear all the time that, I don't want to say are wrong, but are perhaps misconceptions about the break even process or thought
Yeah,
process?
so there's this idea that if you do a Roth conversion, you need a runway, a period of time during which to catch up for all of the taxes that you paid along the way. So in other words, uh, the theory is that if had you left your money in the IRA, uh, you would have more money, but if you do the Roth conversion, you'll only catch up to where you would have been in your Roth IRA if you let that money grow and compound in that Roth IRA over time. And I've heard people say, I need, I should do the Roth conversion if I'm not planning on touching this money for 20 years or something like that, which is utter nonsense. It's 100% nonsense. In fact, Ed Slott at the was at the same conference, and he addressed the same thing. So the idea here is this: look, you when you have $1 million in your IRA, it looks like you have $1 million, but you have a silent partner in that IRA, and that's the IRS. So if tax rates stay where they are today, let's just assume a 30% tax rate. That means that there really are two piles of money. One is yours, call it 70%, and the other is the IRS's, let's call it 30%. So 700,000 of that $1 million IRA is yours. 300,000 belongs to the IRS. If that IRA grows to $2 million, then guess what? The IRS's portion grew right along with it. So you now have 1.4 million. The IRS has 600,000. So there's no catching up. You just have to think about it in terms of two separate piles of money that can only really get bigger in favor of the IRS. Because think about it this way: if tax rates are likely to go up down the road, and I think we've made a pretty good case that they are, then best case scenario is that 70% of that money is yours. It can only get worse from there. If tax rates double, 30% becomes 60. Even if they became 50, now you got $1 million, the IRS has $1 million. So there's no, that whole discussion of catching up or crossover point has nothing to do with this discussion. It's just people misunderstanding how it works. The reality is there's two piles of money, but they're sort of collated onto one investment statement. So it looks like it's one pile of money, but it's really your pile of money, the IRS's pile of money. Both are growing simultaneously, and they're put together on the same account statement. So it looks like if you pay tax to the IRS, you're going to have this long period of time over which you can catch up, but that's just not the case.
Yeah, it looks like you're going to be behind the game, but the way I always try and pose it to people is, look, it is not your money. And most retirees that we're working with will say, my kids are going to be okay. This is my retirement. I come first. There are people who are dearly concerned about leaving a legacy to their children, but the average retiree is saying, my kids are going to be fine. They can take care of themselves, which is great. But when you pose it like this and you change the mindset, the framework to, look, this is not your money. This is not your 30%. Would you rather the IRS gets more of it, or would you rather your children get more of it? Right. And so that you frame it that way, it helps the conversation. Your most recent video on what you would do with $2 million right now on YouTube is a must watch. I believe pretty much every concept you lay out. I sent it to my team of CFPs and I said, look, I am not the only crazy person in this world. This is David McKnight, and now he's saying it. So now they all think I'm right. Everyone should watch that video. I can't share it enough with others. I really agree with what you're doing. I just want to talk quickly. One of the concepts in that video is something I believe in very strongly, is a baseline of guaranteed income. There are multiple ways to get there. We're typically using some sort of insurance product. Just briefly about the concept of a base of guarantees in light of the fact that the stock market right now has been up 16 in the last 18 years. The last 4 years, I think the average return is almost 20%. We have forgotten, the last bad time, 2008. I think my 65-year-old retirees were, trying to run a household and put dinner on the table and working and having a career, and their 401ks went down 50%, but they didn't really think much of it. Now they've forgotten about it. How important is that baseline of income, especially in today's environment?
Well, there's a lot of things, a lot of benefits that come from that people don't always think about. When we talk about a baseline of income, we're basically saying let's find a way to guarantee your living expenses, and that can happen through a couple of different ways. You have Social Security that's guaranteed, right? That's going to be an inflation adjusted. You've got a company pension; those are becoming fewer and farther between, but people still have company pensions. And then you have basically guaranteed lifetime income annuities, which some people call private pensions, which basically operate according to the same rules. People say, Dave, I don't like annuities. A four-letter word. I say, if you don't like annuities, then you're definitely not going to like Social Security or the company pension, because those things operate by the same risk-sharing principles. So the idea with creating a floor of income is, hey, let's say you need $100,000 per year to pay for your living expenses in retirement, and Social Security and pension covers 60,000 of it. How can we generate $40,000 of additional guaranteed income? And basically what you do is you take a chunk of your IRA and you hand it over to an insurance company in exchange for $40,000 of income that's guaranteed to last as long as you do. And so once you have that floor of, say, $100,000 that's guaranteed, it can be inflation adjusted to cover all of your living expenses. Now you can do some really interesting things. Number one, you have a permission to spend. Now that and there's all sorts of studies on this. When you are paying for your retirement, your living expenses in retirement purely off of a stock market portfolio, all of the studies are unanimous on this. People tend to spend less money because they're afraid of spending too much, eating into their principal, running out of money before they die. Academia has been studying this for years and years and years, and they've agreed on that point. People do not spend as much when they're paying for their living expenses out of a stock market portfolio. However, if you have guaranteed lifetime income that's adjusted for inflation, is going to be there rain or shine so long as you're on this side of the grass, that's a different story. People spend in some cases twice as much money because those paychecks keep hitting your bank account and you have to keep trying to find ways to try to spend it. And so that's a big deal. So you have a permission to spend. People tend to be happier because they're not worried about their stock market portfolio. They tend to live longer. I mean, Jane Austen herself said it, and I think it was Pride and Prejudice. The people always seem to live forever when they have an annuity coming to them or something like that, because you keep wanting to get more paychecks, so you keep living longer. So there's all sorts of, and then the big one I think that a lot of people don't think about enough is that when your living expenses are guaranteed, you've got that floor, you now have a permission slip to take more risk in the stock market. Why? Because if the stock market is down, you don't have to take money out of the stock market because your income is guaranteed through all those other sources. You now have a permission slip. You have the luxury of watching it recover before you take further distribution. So I always tell people, you should ratchet up the risk in the stock portion of your portfolio once you have guaranteed your income floor through all those other streams of income.
You have recently released, is it your sixth book?
It's technically my eighth book. I've written a couple.
I've
written a couple of novels along the way. It's probably my seventh financial book, I would say.
Okay, The Secret Order of Millionaires. This is kind of geared to a different group of Americans. Tell me about this book and who is it written for?
Yeah, it's written for Gen Z and millennials, pretty much anyone between age 15 and 45. My kids have read it. It's a financial novella. So it's only about 150 pages long. So it's not a full-length novel. But what I've done is I basically couched 7 principles for building tax-free wealth within the pages of a sort of a suspenseful, fast-paced plot. It's got a really cool twist ending. Once you pick it up, hard to put it down. By the time you've made it through the story, you've unwittingly absorbed all these financial principles along the way. And it's basically designed to hand to your kid who maybe is a teenager or someone who just graduated from high school or college and say, hey, look, all of those principles that made your parents and grandparents wealthy, they still apply in today's world, even if TikTok tells you otherwise. Even if TikTok says put your money into crypto or NFTs or all of these other exotic newfangled things that don't have real proven track records, the thing that has the proven track record is the stock market. And the stock market, as I say in the book, is the single greatest engine for wealth creation the world has ever seen. This is really an attempt to help these younger generations, create a solid financial, foundation upon which to build their financial lives, and to couch it all within a compelling story that has a cool twist ending.
I love that you reached out to this particular group. Secret Order of Millionaires, already a bestseller, believe it or not, on USA Today. Good for you for going there. I think that's well needed in the space. I want to end the discussion today talking about financial advisors. At the most recent conference that we were at that I mentioned at the beginning of the interview, I went around interviewing anybody I could talk to, anyone who wanted to be on camera. Surprisingly, David, or I guess not surprisingly, what we learned is that financial advisors just love to be on camera and talk about themselves. So I had over 2 hours of footage of interviewing financial advisors. Let's just be honest. The majority of them are not tax experts. Kudos to them for going to a retirement planning conference where they want to improve themselves, offer a more holistic offering to their retirees, learning about the topics that you spoke of, how to incorporate real, true tax planning into a financial advisory practice. The fact of the matter is that less than 2% of registered investment advisors in this country are actually completing tax returns, actually tax experts. The CFP, I think there's over 100,000 CFPs now. That code says that you, as a CFP, cannot call yourself a tax expert unless you have the recognized CPA credential or enrolled agent credential. Less than 10% of the CFPs in our world are even able to say they're tax expert. And yet, the number one thing at that conference, the workshop you were at, David, was the number one attended. They had to take a partition down just to fit everyone in there. Was talking about taxes. And not only do retirees, not only are they looking for tax help and tax planning, so too are financial advisors looking for help. There's a bottleneck between the needs of seven-figure savers and the abilities, I believe, of the average financial advisor in America. So tell me a little bit about how you are helping advisors with your workshops and your programs, helping financial advisors, kind of putting them in a better environment. When they plug into your platform, do you give them proprietary tools? How are you helping them better serve today's retiree?
Yeah, we're doing a couple of things. I think the biggest way is we're there are people out there that are anxious to embrace the power of zero worldview. They're anxious. They see the handwriting on the wall. They know that tax rates in the future are likely to be dramatically higher than they are today, but they don't know how to protect themselves against it. They want to get to the 0% tax bracket in retirement, but they know that it's a pretty complex road that you have to travel to get there. You violate a threshold on the one hand, and then that trips another threshold on the other hand. The path to the 0% tax bracket is strewn with landmines and pitfalls. And so you need an expert to hold your hand along the way and shepherd you through that entire process. So people recognize that they need to get there, but they know that they can't do it on their own. And so part of what we do is we put them in front of audiences that are anxious to embrace the paradigm. And of course, obviously, we have to train them on how to do it. And so we have obviously training programs and weekly webinars and portals and things like that give them all of the information. I tell people I want to turn you into David McKnight within 6 months, only without the 7 kids. Though if they want the 7 kids, I can show them how to do that too.
You're certainly helping a lot of advisors out there, and there is a big lack of information, and you're sharing that, and that's a great thing that you're doing so that more people can have access to some of the ideas that we have spoken about today. All the things that we can help people with, they are smart people. They have worked hard. They've had the fortitude to do a great job saving, we are introducing them to a world that they're not familiar with. They know their business, they know their colleagues, they know everything. And this world that we are in is a new world for them. So I hope we took a step today in helping people get closer to a tax-free or zero tax retirement. David McKnight, as always, such a pleasure. Go check out the new book, The Secret Order of Millionaires. David, thanks for being on the show. Very much appreciated it.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
All right, take care. That was my conversation with David McKnight, author of Power Zero. Here are the takeaways. Retirement tax planning, probably the most important conversation retirees, seven-figure savers should be having right now. The national debt is a problem. Tax rates will be going higher. Doing nothing before RMDs, Social Security, and these tax increases collide is, I think, one of the biggest mistakes retirees are making right now. The Roth conversion is the centerpiece around the tax planning. It is possible, and I believe that there is more bad advice about this advanced tax topic than there is good advice. Okay. So choosing the right financial partner may be the most important decision you have in your retirement. If you have not already, here are the steps that you need to follow. Number one, you need to understand how much of your IRA or your 401k, that money that has not yet been taxed, how much of it actually belongs to you? What are your taxes in retirement going to be? How much are you eventually, you and your family, going to pay to the IRS? Most people that I talk to for the first time have no idea what that number is and are shocked when they find out what it actually will be. Number two, what is something that you can plan that potentially reduces that amount of taxes that you're paying to the IRS? Newsflash, if you are a seven-figure saver, you have children and are married, there is probably, as we discussed today, the break even on these Roth conversions truly is yesterday. Number three, if a Roth conversion does make sense, how quickly should you convert? What are the tax bracket you should be using? What are the other things that we are sprinkling around the Roth conversion? It's not just the Roth conversion, it's all the other 12 things you do outside of that and around the Roth conversion. What does that look like? Okay. We know that taxes are not going to be this way forever. Okay. Our system is the AIM retirement system. It's built to do exactly that. Take the Roth conversion and all the important elements of retirement planning and bring them retirees so they can stress test their plan, create income stability, and look for this tax reduction opportunity. What a great conversation we had with David McKnight. So if this conversation made you wonder about your situation, I encourage you to take the AIM retirement assessment. You can check out the link in the notes of the show or the QR code here on your screen. It is a simple way to assess your situation, identify the risks, and explore opportunities, or just have a second look at your retirement strategy. As always, I thank you so much for listening to our podcast, Retirement for Life. My name is Christian Sear, CPA, CFP, and I will see you in the next episode.
Investment advisory services provided by Sear Financial, Inc., SEC registered investment advisor. All content on this podcast is for information purposes only and should not be considered investment, legal, or tax advice. Material presented is believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations are made by our firm as to another party's informational accuracy or completeness.